In our readings for this Sunday, we hear the account of two widows who are both in pretty much the same predicament, right? They're down to the last of their resources and place their trust in God, right? Rather than in material things or money. Right? In the book of Kings, the widow is asked by Elijah, imagine this, asking for her last bit of flour and oil to make a cake for him. She had already shown that she knew that he was a man of God. And so we see here her transferring, right, her faith in and letting go, really, of any reliance on material things and beginning to just depend completely upon God for her well-being. And right, God prepares this. Elijah told her that God would provide, right? The jar will not go empty and the jug will not go dry. She believed him, and we see that she and her son and Elijah lived on what remained there for a year, right? So obviously a tremendous miracle of providence that God would provide for her seemingly from nothing, right? But God created the whole world and the whole universe out of nothing, and so no surprise that he can sustain people on next to nothing. But right, the Lord sees into the heart, right? He knows the gift. There's kind of a bumper sticker slogan, you might say, or a little piece of wisdom that floats around that is true, that say that a rich man is somebody who knows the price of everything, right? But a wise man knows the value, right? And so to know the difference between what something costs and what something is worth. And that's very true, hits home in the gospel today, right? That the widow that is in the temple has a couple of pennies left. I think that's where our saying, I put in my 2 cents worth. In other words, for what it's worth, here's my opinion, right? Usually we say, maybe it will help you, maybe it won't, but here's my 2 cents worth. Well, this widow is putting in her last 2 cents, right? Again, somebody who's come to the end of depending upon earthly goods and saying, well, from now on, it's up to God to provide for me. And we see that many saints have been put to that same test. We've seen it over and over in the lives of the saints. St. Francis, for example, right, abandoned his inheritance, everything, to follow Jesus in a radical way. Even our Lord's own disciples, right, he called them, they had to abandon their nets and their families to go with the Lord. And so many people have been put to that test, and right, when they transferred their true dependence to God. This not knowing the difference between that is something that God, of course, has perfect insight to. And he knows what it costs us for things that have no price on them at all. So, for example, sometimes it costs us a lot personally to be kind to somebody who we don't feel like being kind to, right? To have a good word for somebody that we don't feel like encouraging, right? It costs us a lot to do that, right? $0.00, but a lot, right? Of what it costs our pride and, right, setting aside grudges and wanting to see, justice according to our own terms, all that stuff. Setting that aside, right? And the cost of following the gospel is tremendous at times, right? The cost of our salvation, right? $0.00, but infinite value. Jesus Christ laid down his life, right, for the sake of our salvation. And so we're confronted with things like this all the time, right? Something doesn't cost us anything, right, to put on a smile for somebody, to go out of our way. And sometimes, there might be even a material cost involved in the things that we do. Here's the thing. God knows what it is, right? We should never try to do that, and this is what Jesus is pointing out with the Pharisees. They're doing things for other people to see, right? He uses the example in another place, a very similar way of speaking about it. He says, right, when you give alms, don't ring a bell or blast a trumpet, right? Oh, look at me, I'm about to give money to the poor, right? He says they've already received their reward, which is, right, in some way the esteem of other people. No, he says, build up your treasure in heaven by things that only God can see. Only God can see what it really costs you, right, to follow the gospel, what sacrifices you make in your personal life. When God alone sees that, right, that is treasure in heaven that no one can take away, right? And so much more profoundly valuable than material things. There's many of the commentators, especially the early church fathers, would say that the widow in the temple is Our Lady. Right? It doesn't say that. This is just simply reflection that many of the saints have made. This is why Jesus is particularly focused on her. Right? Somebody who he would know inside and out, that her dependence is completely upon God, and she's putting her last material things into the collection there. Showing our Lord, right, her trust in him, right? You might imagine them glance from one to the other, and her saying, right, I have nothing to depend on but you, Jesus. And so this is something for us to contemplate in our own life, right? The things that we're hanging on to, that we're depending on rather than God, right? The things that we need to let go of in order that God may be who we trust in, right, and not in material wealth. We cannot serve God and mammon. So let us serve God well, right, and trust and know that God knows your sacrifices, right? He knows what it costs you to live the gospel. He asks anyway, right, because he also knows the reward that lays in store for those who love him.